I'm Lake, supervising biologist with the Division of Marine Fisheries. I'm here tonight to officiate this hearing on behalf of DEM Director Terry Gray. With me tonight from the division are Acting Chief Scott Olszewski, Nicole Langell-Costa, Katie Rodriguez, Julia Livermore, Pete Duhamel, and Corinne Truesdale, and Josh Bergeron from DLE. Tonight's hearings concerns several proposed amendments to the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries regulations, which were publicly noticed on October 16th, 2024, pursuant to the procedural requirements of the Rhode Island General Laws, Chapter 42-35, Administrative Procedures, and the Office of the Rhode Island Secretary of State, and under the authority of Rhode Island General Laws, Chapters 42-17.1. The purpose of this hearing is to afford interested parties an opportunity to provide oral testimony, data opinions, and/or arguments concerning the proposed rule. Please be advised that this hearing is being recorded and will be made available in the division's webpage tomorrow. For tonight's hearing, the following process will be observed. The division will provide a PowerPoint presentation summarizing each of the main proposals. Persons wishing to speak must raise their hand and be recognized by the hearing officer prior to speaking. Speakers must first state their name and affiliation for the record. And please try to remember that. That helps me out immensely. Also, this is a hybrid meeting. We have folks here in person and folks online. As always, we'll go to folks in person first, then we'll go online. This hearing is not a workshop and not a forum for discussing, debating, arguing, or otherwise having dialogue about proposals. A hearing is to provide the public with opportunity to provide comments and testimony only. Any questions must be limited to clarifying questions only. Staff is available to discuss the proposals in detail outside this hearing in order to assist you with formulating your comment. Comments may be submitted in writing during the public comment period, which is open right now. Once oral comments are complete, the hearing will conclude. Written comments are strongly encouraged and may be submitted by the end of the comment period, which is Thursday, November 15th. The recording of this public hearing and comments will be provided to the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries Council for consideration at their meeting on December 2nd, at which time the council will provide a recommendation to the director on each item. After the comment period has passed and the council meeting has taken place, the director will render his final decisions. The director has the option to file the rules and regulations with the Secretary of State as noticed, file the rules and regulations with minor changes, or not file the rule and considering re-noticing them with or without additional amendments. If filed, these rules and regulations will become effective 20 days after filing and have the effect of law. So without further ado, let's get to the slides. All right, the first item up for comment is Blue Crab 2025 management. So a little background here, the Rhode Island General Law prohibiting nighttime harvest of blue crabs was removed this year. And there has been a proposal in response to that. So we have three here for comment. The first is a division proposal, which would simply delete the invalid statutory reference. That would mean status quo for what we have right now. The second proposal is a stakeholder proposal, which would remove the nighttime prohibition and invalid statutory reference. So this would open up blue crab fishing at night in Rhode Island. So the division did see this proposal and it did have a response to it. We would, if the nighttime prohibition is completely removed, we would move to modify the possession limit to apply to all gear types. What this means is that there would be a 25 crab per person day limit on all gear types. Right now, there is no limit on crab harvest with hand line or hand dip nets, hand methods. So any comments on 2025 blue crab management? Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. My name is Michael Woods, here today on behalf of the New England chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. We worked with the legislature when we got this law passed, and the rationale that we brought in working with the legislature was that we wanted to lift the prohibition on night crabbing so that the agency could make a recommendation on whether it was sustainable. And as I looked through the regulatory analysis, it appeared to me as though the agency had. It looked like the change could be made to allow night harvest, but that you would want to also add or not add, but lift the exemption on the keep limit and make it so it's 25 per for everybody, and that generally would result in a sustainable level of harvest. And so what BHA's position is here is that we support making the change and we support changing the limit to essentially make sure that we don't overharvest crabs and damage the population. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Super. My name is Carl Tiska. I'm a recreational angler. And in terms of full disclosure, I'm on the RISO Legislative Committee, although I'm not speaking for the committee. And I was the principal action officer on drafting the proposed change to the legislation and then working it through the legislature to signature. So I'm a recreational angler, pretty avid kayak angler, and I really enjoy nighttime fishing. One of the things I love about nighttime fishing is there aren't a lot of people out there doing it. It gives you, a bit of peace. And I strongly suspect, although I have no data to support this, that I would be surprised if there end up being that many folks out there that are harvesting crabs at night. Just because I know there are a lot of folks squidding along the bridge in spring and fall for a few weeks, but the rest of the year, only a handful of folks are out fishing at night. So I suspect, and as Mike mentioned, the analysis with the addition of the 25 per day crab limit, that it probably wouldn't result in a excessive harvest of the crabs. So I want to speak in support of proposal 2 and proposal 3. And if there's, again, not data, but I suspect that if you do lift the nighttime restriction, I'd probably go out once, maybe twice a year to do it. I can't speak for everybody else, but that's how much I would probably harvest crabs at night. So really appreciate if you take that into consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else for blue crab in the audience?
I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
Jim Kaczynski, is this recreational?
Blue crab does not have a recreational or commercial stipulation. It simply has a 25 crab per person per day limit for all gear types except hand gear. Anyone online? Moving on. The next item up for comment is our summer fall commercial aggregate program. We have 4 proposals here. I'm going to go through the first 3 proposals first and take comments on those. And then I'm going to take comments on 2 other items together at the end. So the first proposal is the division proposal, which clarifies when the aggregate program is authorized. We originally were using the word season. This has some confusion. We call all of our other quota periods, so we're amending that to call the period in which the aggregate program operates a period, or the time it operates as a period. The second proposal is also a division proposal. It is a clarification proposal to say what happens when the trigger is reached and the possession limit reverts back to daily. We did hit the trigger on fluke this year for one of the periods, and it resulted in a lot of confusion. Folks were not sure from reading the regulations whether or not that meant that both species, summer flounder and black sea bass, were both going to the daily limit, or if it was just one of them. We are clarifying to make it clear that if a trigger is reached for that given species, it is only that given species, which goes back to a daily limit. The other species, if the trigger is not reached, will continue to operate in aggregate mode. The third proposal we have is also a division proposal. This is more of an accountability proposal. And it is stating that if a participant, a person is removed from the aggregate program due to some non-compliance finding, then the vessel that they were tied to in the program may also be removed for the duration of that period in the calendar year. So if your captain gets removed, you can't come back and apply with the same vessel within the same calendar year. I would take comments on any of these 3 proposals right now. Yes.
Ken Booth, commercial rod and reel. Yeah, John, I would like to, the 85% quota, trigger has me, is a concern. When this program went into effect, I think our position was it should be 70%. I think the division had put forward 80%, and then somebody from industry wanted 85 and went with 85. This year was not a real healthy year for summer flounder in state waters in the area, so. I think it's a tough comparison, a tough measure on it, in that if the fish really showed up, that 85% would have got hit well before the end of the period. And when the 85%, I'll hypothesize on this, in that if all the dealers reported on time, you would have information in 1 week to be able to make a judgment, but that week would already be initiated into an aggregate week. So you wouldn't be able to shut it till the next week. So if you hit the 85% trigger, you're probably not shutting it until 90 or 92%, depending on how healthy the fishery is. Until we're up at that point. So while the aggregate program makes sense, at some level, it's not feasible for every fisherman, every sector. So we have to be careful that we don't shut people out of the game, because people participating in the aggregate can get all their fish. And then it closes, and then they're happy, they've got their fish, but other people are still looking, but there are no fish for them. So based on that, we go back to the 70% cutoff. That gives the department the leeway to move poundage up to still make it attractive if we're off, but it provides a better number to ensure that that fishery will last the full length of the period. Comment. And then I would also comment that when it looks at the compliance with the requirements of the aggregate, they get away from the permissive may result in the vessel not being input, will result in the vessel not being eligible. You get away from the permissive so that people fully understand what the penalty is, and they'll suffer the terms of it if need be.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just want to add, because we didn't notice any changes to the actual trigger number, we'll just have to double check with legal to make sure that it fits within the scope of what we did notice. They might tell us that because we didn't put out any specific proposals to change the trigger number,
Yep.
we can't do that this time around.
I understand, but and again.
We'll check with them though to.
Yeah,
to
and
see.
the council can make their own decision on what their recommendation is. You know, I just want to be on record to say that.
Yep.
You know, if it works, but it's, you know, we'll see. Again, to the point of, we're making decisions for this coming year without seeing, we're not even done with this year on CBAS. If CBAS closes next week, then it didn't work. You know, so the only way to ensure that is to drop that trigger number. And it still leaves the department with plenty of leeway to play with poundage to make sure that everything gets caught.
No, thank you for coming. That's great. Yes.
Ryan, right, Ryan Commercial Rod and Rail Association. So, this aggregate program we're talking about now, is it just, flounder and sea bass we're talking about?
Currently, the summer fall aggregate program involves summer flounder and black sea bass.
And black sea bass. And we got it, and the aggregate program also extends to 7 days a week now,
It does, yes.
so. I don't know, I can't make a proposal there, I guess, but I would say we go back to the 5 days a week. And then we can control it a little better, and then if we have a lot of fish left at the end of the year, then just add the poundage on, like you can change it week by week. You know, if there's a lot of fish left in November or the end of October, well, then you bump it up to 150, 200. But by doing this now, I mean, the state's promoting this Ecogenie program, I mean, and if we're gonna feel that this is gonna shut down next week, you got these buyers that still wanna buy this Ecogenie product, and it's gonna be shut down and it's over, so it doesn't make any sense. And in the trigger program that Kenny's talking about, spot on, that's gonna be reduced down to 70%, because when they shut it at 70 or 75, it's in reality, it's gonna be 85 by the time it's all said and done, where all the dealers give their reports. I mean, it happens every year, the year in and the year out, it's the same old story. So, I mean, we know what to do, we just gotta do it.
Appreciate your comment. As Nicole noted, we are mandated to operate on a little stricter guidelines for our public process from the Secretary of State. Your comments do help us consider whether we should bring this back out to discuss.
And then that 7 day a week aggregate, now, it's all it does is it floods the market with all these fish. I mean, slow and steady wins the race. You wanna bring all these fish in a week, they're not worth anything. Medium sea bass are 80 cents, large are $2. I mean, they're not even worth it. Bring it in a little slower, you get more money for them. At the end of the year, if you need to increase it to fill the quota, then increase it.
Thank you. Any other comments in the audience? Anyone online? Let's move on to the next one. So the next two proposals I'm going to go through, they both involve Tautog. I'm going to go through them and then I'm just going to put up a slide with the current Tautog management structure. Then I'll take the comments. So our fourth aggregate proposal is an industry proposal, and it was to add Tautog as an authorized species under the aggregate program at 5 times the daily limit with no trigger. This would authorize the aggregate. So this would add Tautog as a species within the aggregate program, which operates between May 1st and December 31st, but have a weekly limit based on 5 times the daily. We also received another proposal for Tautog, and that is to just have a weekly limit, just like we have it for black sea bass in the winter or bluefish. And that would be a limit of 50 fish per person per vessel week, instead of a 10 fish per person per vessel day limit. So those are the two Tautog proposals. Basically, Tautog operates a little bit outside the ag program. It does start in April. The ag program does not start in May, so there's a little difference there. Also, the aggregate program has a lot more accountability measures associated with it that we've discussed ad nauseum in the past. So that's the difference here between the two. And just to show the current management for Tautog, just a reminder that we manage it in 3 periods: a spring and fall period, which have 42.5% of the quota each, as well as a smaller period in the summertime, bycatch period, basically at about 15%, all operate at 10 fish per person per day. So I take comments on the proposal 4 for aggregate, or for the proposal 1 for the Tautog weekly limits. Yes, sir.
Nick Bocchino, Rhode Island Commercial Rod and Reel. I am dead against the aggregate. I think many would agree. It's a small enough quota to begin with. A fish that's really not worth a ton of money. Yeah, people were telling me the other day it's like $325, $350. You start bringing in, 50 fish. Everyone starts bringing this in. It's going to close the season early. The Ikejime buyers are going to be totally out between that or sea bass. There's not a whole lot in state waters to fish for in the fall, and the price is going to plummet to nothing. I mean, so big whoop, you get to keep your 50 fish, like your 50 fish, and they're worth $2 a pound. Like that's, no one's really getting rich off that. Keep the season open. The quota's going to get filled the way it is. That's just my opinion. Works for everyone that way. It's going to totally shut this thing down, as Ron or Ken had brought up. The state's behind this. If the state's behind this Ikejime, I think they got to be behind it. They got to give us something to fish for. Ron?
And then, right, this would be a total disaster for something that is working with the low quota that we have. If I'm not mistaken, how many pounds we get a year, Nicole? 52,000 pounds to Tautog?
Pretty low.
I think it's 52. That's what I think it is. It's working 3 seasons. It's working spring, summer, and fall. Status quo has been working all these years. What do we want to do? We want to make this another bass rodeo? That's what's going to happen if we do this. It's absurd. It's a big mistake. I'm totally against it.
Thank you for that.
Ken Booth, Rhode Island Commercial Rod and Reel. And to echo what's already been said, I don't know what the problem is, because it's not a big enough quota to aggregate out. When we look at the spring season, the first period, you look at how the fish get distributed. Narragansett Bay has a better, healthier fishery early on. The water temperatures warm up down along the ocean, Newport, South County. Things are slower. The guys fishing down there typically don't start getting fish until May, until the end of that period. So closing earlier is going to shut them out. And then, to be perfectly frank, the gaming ship that goes on up in the bay, I mean, you guys know there was a big lead of 2,500 pounds or so at the time that went out of there under the radar screen. This is gonna enable that to occur more often. The other impact is that the Tautog fairly territorial. You get on rock piles and whatnot, you take 50 fish off a rock pile, it's pretty much done. And I don't know if Riss is weighing in on this at all, but it's gonna have a big impact on the recreational season, particularly in the bay early on. If all those fish come out, so I don't see, again, what's the problem that we're trying to fix? If there's a problem and I don't know what it is, if a couple of people are upset because they want to get more of the quota, you know, at the expense of everybody else, shame on them. But there's not enough quota to pass out. Again, it works as it has for the periods. There's no apparent need to change it.
Thanks, Miguel. Yes.
Phil Madison, commercial rod and reel. I agree with everything these three just said. 100% against the aggregate. I think we're filling the quota in each sub period. It's working well. We're not leaving any quota on the table. Let's just stick with how it is and roll with it. It's working well.
Army takes care of a commercial rod and reel. I think for a fish that takes almost 7 years to get to a legal limit, we should stick with the status quo and continue on to make sure there is a fishery available through most of the latter half of the year.
Yes.
Jim Kaczynski, commercial rod and reel. I've been for keeping it status quo. I think more people get to fish and catch fish that way. Spreads it out so that more of us have an opportunity to do it. When you put it into 50, it'll be gone and less people have the opportunity to.
Yes,
I mean, when acting commercial rod and reel, I believe we should leave it as status quo. I'm against the aggregate for the top.
Thank you. Anyone online?
Paul Bernanke.
Oh, sorry.
Commercial rod and reel. I think we should leave it status quo.
Sorry. All right, well, if there's no one else online, that's all the slides we have for this hearing. So since there are no further comments to be presented at this time on the behalf of the Department of Environmental Management, I'd like to thank you all for attending and for your comments. At this time, I declare this public hearing to be closed. Again, please be reminded that the public comment period will conclude at 4 p.m. on Friday, November 15th. Thanks, and feel free to reach out, anyone on staff, if you have any questions about any of the programs or proposals that you have.